It's just worth thinking that good copy needs to paint a picture in people's minds. You want to paint a picture. You want people to be able to imagine and visualize what you're talking about. And the problem with generic language is it doesn't do that. It just kind of washes over you. Like, well, I don't actually understand what that means. And so it doesn't resonate, but a specific detail. And there are lots of interesting details that you can pull out. That's a lot of what we do in program pages, is adding in that specific detail to make it more interesting.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast here on the B Podcast Network. This is a show dedicated to helping higher ed marketers tell better stories, create better content, and enroll more students. My name's John Azzoni. I'm the founder at Unveiled, and we're a video production company working specifically with college marketing teams to make it easy for them to scale up and even automate their student and alumni success stories through our subscription approach. And you can learn more about that at unveiled.tv, and that's UNVEILD.tv. If you're listening to this podcast for the first time, go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you. And if you're wanting your college and university's content to resonate on a deeper emotional level with prospective students, with alumni, with parents, whatever, I want you to subscribe to my free newsletter. Every week I send out tips and insights on creating more emotionally resonant content, including examples and best practices from other institutions, articles and blog posts, that week's podcast episode, and much more. So head over to unveiled.tv/newsletter and sign up. All right, let's get on with the show. Okay, my guest today is Joe Marshall. Joe is the founder of All Things Words, a specialist copy and content strategy for higher education clients. She's spent more than 2 decades working with universities and schools to banish the blah and create better copy and content. Joe and her team have particular expertise in helping universities find their voice, shape their messaging, and tell more compelling stories that resonate with higher ed's diverse audiences. They work with education clients in the UK, Europe, and here in the States, including UCL, University of Loughborough, and the Anglo-American University in Prague, and their program platform Coursera. So today we're talking about university program pages. For our listeners in the UK, I think they call them course pages. In the States, we call them program pages. We'll use them interchangeably to mean the same thing, and would be a landing page on your college or university's website that houses information about a specific program or course or degree. So we're talking about, how do you optimize those pages so that they're really serving the goals of your institution and making it easy for prospective students to get the info they need at the moment they need it and in a language that will speak to them. So Joe, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be with you.
So, what's it like being from the UK?
Well, I'm pretty biased. I love it here. I've always lived here. Yeah, it's a pretty cool place, the UK. Have you ever been?
I have not. My daughter is, she's almost 9. She's really loves, trying to talk with a British accent lately.
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, we do the same in our house with American, especially when we find words that are completely different pronunciation. We had it recently, actually. My son, he's 7 and was really into dinosaurs. He's just grown out of them. But we say diplodocus. How do you say it?
Diplodocus. I've never even heard of that. It's the name
of a dinosaur. Diplodocus, apparently you say in American.
Diplodocus.
Yeah, they were like, what? What even is that?
It's like when I had a professor in college that it was like an advertising class, and he would call it an advertisement, and it was like, I don't know, is that how you guys say it in the UK?
Advert, yeah, advert, and what is advertisement with you guys?
Yeah, advertisement. Yeah.
yeah the little quirks.
Yeah, I did when I was in art school, I did a semester in south of France or whatever, and did like a little independent studio program, and I lived with a host family, and like the daughter of the family would always try to say cheese, and she couldn't do the double E sound, so it should be ches. And I was like, how can you not just say cheese? Just say it. Like, it's just so funny. Like when people grow up on a certain dialect, like motor function just
Absolutely.
solidifies in a certain way.
Yeah, the sound is like almost impossible to make, isn't it? And if you don't have that in your own language.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start off with a little icebreaker here. What's something that people would be surprised to know about you?
Okay, so I have sung on stage with David Jones from the Monkees, from the 60s band The Monkees. Yeah, and it
That's
was
cool.
like, yeah, it was like pretty emotional. My parents were there. There were six of us who were invited on stage to sing with him.
You were like at a
Um,
concert and that he brought you up on stage, or?
well, it wasn't in his like the height of his career. It was in the 80s, and it was a play that we'd gone to see of Puss in Boots. And he was like, they always have like a famous person in one of those plays, and he was like, the later part of his career, he was like the funny character, and he invited people to come up on stage to sing with him. So I was 8 when it happened.
Wow,
um,
that's
and
cool.
yeah, so if I just start at the beginning of that story again, yeah, so it was yeah, it wasn't the height of his career. It was in the 80s, and it was a pantomime, like a theatre production of Puss in Boots. And he was like the funny character. He invited people up on stage to sing. And I asked my mum about this the other day when I thought I might mention it to you. And she said that I really like eagerly put up my hand to go up on stage, like no fear, and went up. There were six of us, and we sang "Old MacDonald Had a Farm." I don't know if you have that song, the same
Oh
song.
yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
and I was the pig, so I had to do the pig. And I just remember he gave me a signed picture and a pack and like a box of sweets, a box of chocolate. And but it was a big moment. I was 8, and he was famous, even though he was like 20 years probably after his like the height of his fame.
Wow, that's a really cool story. I used to watch with my sister. The Monkees had a TV show
Yeah.
um, when we were little, and I can't even remember what it was about, but I just remember the theme song was the "Hey Hey, we're the Monkees." you know.
Yeah, I remember that too. And he was like the funny one, wasn't he? The David Jones. He was like the funny character. And so I think, yeah, it was a big thing, especially for 8-year-old me. I was like, wow, I've got this signed picture. I sang with him. It didn't matter to me that it was, oh, McDonald had a farm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I in high school I was in like a punk band and would like just shred my guitar in my room all the time, and like to these songs like Blink 182 and stuff like that, and I would envision myself being called up on stage to like some Blink 182 concert, and like the guitar player had gotten sick or something like that, and the only person
Yeah.
that could fill in was me. And that was like the scene that would play out in my room when I was 14. So
Oh,
you're just living the dream.
I was living the dream. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start with your background a little bit. So how did you get into an expertise in copywriting?
Yeah, so it's interesting actually to reflect on because it wasn't a planned career path at all. I talk to a lot of students now, in my work with universities, and a lot of people seem to have their career path like meticulously planned out, or they have like a lot of idea of where they want to go and how they want to get there. I stumbled into copywriting. I kind of fell into it. I studied French at uni because my dad advised me to choose a subject that I liked, and I liked French. So I studied French, got out of uni, and that was almost the first time I thought, what am I actually going to do with my degree? Like, I don't think I'd actually thought, I don't know, what job am I going to do? And I ended up doing an awful kind of sales job for a phone company, selling like telesales, on the phones, and I hated it. And it was a real motivation to, go out and get a proper job. And this was like not pre-internet, but it was kind of, we weren't using the internet in any way like we are now. So I went to the local university careers office. I found this big directory, and I literally wrote down, they had a directory of like who would take a graduate trainee. all these local businesses, and I wrote down all the names of the businesses for anyone that would take like an arts graduate or a humanities graduate. And then I remember sitting in my damp like hallway of my shared house that I was sharing with friends, and I just phoned them all. I was just like, I was quite determined, I think, but I was just like, I phoned like 20 companies, and about the 20th company happened to be a copywriting company. And I had the same spiel. I was like, I'm just phoning to see if you might be interested in taking on a graduate trainee. And they happened to say yes. They were like, well, we are actually. And they were like, come in and have a chat with us. And then I was like, oh, right, I better look up what copywriting is, because I didn't actually know. So I then looked it up and went for the interview, and that's where it all started. But that was 24 years ago. But it all started from this like just a chance phone call, really.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
I mean, people say they stumbled into a job. That's really stumbling into.
Yeah. Exactly. I kind of feel like I fell into it, and then I realized that I quite liked it, and I was, developed my skills, and I turned out I was like pretty good at it, and then I've just stuck at it since then. Obviously lots of twists and turns and things have happened along the way, but that's where it all began.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit more about your work with institutions that we mentioned in your intro. So UCL, University of Loughborough, as you would say.
Well done on your pronunciation there. It's a hard one. So now I run a little copy agency called All Things Words, and we work solely now with universities. In the last couple of years, gone all in on working with universities. I've worked on and off with colleges and schools and universities for over 20 years, but yeah, we now solely focus on that. And we do all kinds of copywriting and content writing. But I guess sort of to step back, the main problem that we help universities solve is, they're not communicating well enough in some way, or they are, and so the communication that they're putting out, or maybe they're not even doing a particular type of communication, they're not getting the results that they could be from that communication or that type of communication. So a lot of what that actually boils down to now is stories. We write a lot of stories about university research, about student success, alumni stories, industry partnerships, all kinds of stories that universities might want to tell to connect people in more interesting ways to the brilliant things that are going on in their institutions. And yeah, those two names you mentioned, UCL, they're a massive university here. They're like in the top 10, I think, in lots of the rankings. And so it's been great to get involved with them. We started working with them in 2021. It's so mid-pandemic. And the first project we did with them was actually a little bit different. You think of universities as doing teaching and research, but they also have a third strand, a lot of them, which is the innovation and enterprise side of things. So we were asked to come in and help UCL tell better stories about this amazing innovation and enterprise work that they're doing. So that's all about taking research out into industry. How do you translate the stuff that's happening in universities? Don't want to be ivory towers. How are you making it real? How are you using it to solve problems? How are you working with organizations to collaborate? How are your students maybe setting up their own businesses off the back of stuff that they're learning on your programs? So it's really, really interesting stuff. But when they came to us, they're massive, UCL. I don't know how many people in terms of students, but they're very, very big. And the faculty, some of their faculties are each faculty is almost the size of its own school. And so They had all these stories, but they were really not consistent. They weren't being consistently told. So we went in and did this really interesting project where we helped all the faculties create a bank of stories around different, partnerships or entrepreneurship or different types of innovation story. And then we went out and found those stories, obviously with the help of our marketing contacts, and we interviewed the academics. So that was a really great way into UCL. We started working with them, and since then that has snowballed into lots of work with other teams. Our name has been passed around. It's that kind of lovely thing that can happen with a big organization. If you get known, then it can lead to other things.
Yeah. UCL, is that in the UK?
Yeah, so that's University College London. So I shouldn't be using acronyms.
Okay.
I would tell clients off for using acronyms. It's University College London. They are based in London, and they're one of the big university, one of the kind of really well-known, renowned ones here, and they're doing a lot of really groundbreaking research as well. Cool. Like developing the new cancer treatments, for example, that are really around like harnessing the immune system to tackle cancer, or big stuff to do with climate change, to do with tackling inequality. They're really doing some very exciting work. So like for me personally as a copywriter, to be working on that stuff is like, it's a privilege, and it's really exciting to help communicate stuff which is really important and is actually changing, has the potential to change things and make things better.
I love that. And I'm a huge advocate, especially lately, as I've been seeing more and more videos coming out of universities that have strong research focuses, is just, that is so interesting to me. I mean, just like watching a story about some groundbreaking research that's happening on, I saw a video from University of Chicago here in the States, did a video on like sleep study research that they did. And then one story that always sticks with me every day, I think about it for this reason, and I can't remember the school it was, but they tested what happens when you flush the toilet with the seat open, and like how many germs, like micro germs, fly into the air.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And so they're basically
Gross.
like they put like a chemical in the water, and then like a glow light, like a black light or something, and it was disgusting how much it was like a fountain of just toilet particles. And so now I cover my toothbrush. I have a little toothbrush cover that so I think about that.
I'm going to do that now. I'm going to cover my toothbrush.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. But I mean, that's groundbreaking, college research right there. That's really what we get our money, where we get our money's worth. But yeah, I find that so interesting, and I think that there's so much power in, like, I just feel like that's what would convince me to go to a school, as like a school that's like doing something cool out in the world. Like that would be a huge motivator for me. So
yeah, exactly. And the fact that you actually are going to be able to, I mean, they can like working with a university like this, a school like that, is they can actually say, we are leading the way in this stuff, and you could be part of it. Like, you could come and like work with us, especially if you're doing a master's program. You can come and like be part of this new research. And how exciting is that, to feel that you actually might be able to in some way kind of influence something like that at that level, even when you're going to, you're just studying at that bachelor's or master's level.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick break here. I have a question for you. Have you ever had to manage the production of a video before for your school, where you were the person that had to coordinate all the scheduling? Like, you had like 5 people that needed to be interviewed for this thing, and you had to juggle all the schedules and figure out how to line them up for individual slots miraculously on the same day. And on top of that, you had to talk to like your facilities guy and make sure the door to the engineering lab was going to be open at a certain time so the crew could get in there, film some B-roll. You had to coordinate volunteers to be in the footage and blah, 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 and, right? Let me tell you something. Working with an outside video vendor should not look like this. Unfortunately, I've worked with enough video folks to know that the mainstream school of thought is they will coordinate the crew and all the production stuff, the editing, etc., and they will expect you to coordinate all your folks. And I'll be honest, sometimes there's stuff that the video people just can't coordinate for you. Like, I'm probably not going to email your college's president out of the blue to ask them to be in this video and to coordinate their schedule when they've never heard of me or this project. Like, that just makes more sense coming from you, at least to get their initial buy-in. But as much as possible, your job should be to get buy-in from all the right people and then introduce those stakeholders to the video producer to coordinate, which is not you. Unfortunately, we live in a world where it just doesn't work like that most of the time. In fact, I talked to a marketing director at a pretty well-known art school recently who told me he hired this video crew to film a couple program promo videos, and they paid a lot of extra money. This was a bit of a splurge, is the impression I got. And they got 2 videos out of the deal. And he said to me, all that money we paid and I still had to coordinate everything. Like, we paid a premium for someone to do these videos and I was doing all the grunt work. So here's the deal. At Unveiled, one of the things we take really seriously is making sure the process is easy on you, especially that pre-production process, which is where a lot of the not fun stuff tends to show up. So whether we're working together through our video storytelling subscriptions, a big commercial, or maybe a smaller one-off video project, know that in addition to delivering a great end product, we also have our eyes on making that a smooth and oftentimes fun journey along the way. And even after it's done, we want to make sure you're set up for success, which is why we give you all the raw footage, all that B-roll and interview footage to repurpose however you want at no extra charge. So if you have video needs right now, don't let the management of those projects stress you out. We are your partners in taking as much work off your plate as possible. So if that's you, I want you to head over to unveiled.tv. That's unveiled.tv and book a call with me. And let's talk about how we can best support you. All right, back to the show. So I talk a lot about telling better stories. You know, we talk about that a lot on this podcast, and yeah. Everyone, and I didn't put this in my questions list. So, you know, if you don't have a good answer for it, don't worry about it. This is a bonus question. Okay. But when you say tell better stories, what does that mean for you? Like, what are structures that you're putting into place when you start working with a school that elevates their storytelling?
Yeah, I think storytelling is like such, I know everyone kind of bangs on about it these days and you see posts on it all the time on LinkedIn, but I think there's something really powerful about telling good stories. You know, as humans, we're kind of hardwired to like story and to find meaning in story and to see ourselves reflected in stories. So I think for universities or schools, you know, trying to reach potential students, telling stories where people can actually see them, like a person that's like them or potentially, you know, a bit like them doing amazing things, that can be really inspiring. So those kind of stories, I think, you know, are really worth doing. But I think in terms of telling better stories, one of the things we like that innovation and enterprise project, for example, that I mentioned for UCL, you know, a lot of the stories already existed, but they just weren't being very well told. So okay. the actual project was really interesting, but the way it was being told, or the partnership or whatever it was, like for various reasons, either because it was written in academic language, too boring language, or that it wasn't focused on the reader. It wasn't sort of thinking, who is this actually aimed at? So it was, you know, it's kind of simple communication techniques, I guess. But if you don't know them, then they aren't simple, right? So just really focusing on the reader. So in that case, it's like if we want to get more partnerships going with the university, if we want to get more people from industry interested, we need to be talking about it from their perspective and what the benefits are of working with you from their perspective. So those were the kind of things we did. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think that we often, like when we write stories or create content for our own organizations, I think we often write it with our peers in mind. Rather than our audience in mind. Like, what will my peers in academia think of the way that this is written, or the words that I'm using? In one hurdle that I have gotten over in my career is the pejorative use of the word videographer. So right. The videographer amongst video people is a negative connotation that means like you go to some wedding with some big camera on your shoulder and you stick a microphone in people's faces, and it's just very low quality kind of, versus like filmmaking type of stuff. But like, recently doing some research on like, how do people actually use, like, what do people actually type into Google when they want to hire a video person? So I tested all of these keywords: video producer, filmmaker, blah blah blah, and overwhelmingly it was just videographer. Like,
Right.
so and so it's sort of like, you got to get over what other people, your peers with it, because your peers aren't the ones that are submitting the application.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so important actually in all types of communication. On LinkedIn, it's important, it's kind of trying to put aside, like, who are you actually talking to? Who are you trying to reach? I think when I first got onto LinkedIn, I was thinking, oh, how's this going to sound to other copywriters? But actually, they're not the people that are necessarily going to be buying from me, or
Right.
wanting to work with me. And it's so, and stuff that we think, as people who've been perhaps doing what we do a long time, we think it's kind of second nature. It might not be, it's not going to be second nature to everybody. So it's explaining things in a way that is understandable. I think in academia, there's an extra challenge, is that there's a lot of experts in universities and schools, and they are used to talking in a very different way, like a very dry, generally, and complicated way. Like, I look at journal articles and I'm like, wow, it literally makes your head hurt trying to understand what it's saying.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of what we do is translation. I've said this, I've talked about this before, but it's like, yeah, we're translators. We're translating academic speak into normal language.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to think about it. Okay, shifting to our topic here, program pages or course pages. What should those pages do? What are the questions those pages should answer for a prospective student?
Yeah, I think a really kind of top level, sort of the simplest way of thinking about it is that a program page needs to give a prospective student all the information that they need to make their decision about that program. And, there's a lot, been said about decision making and how like different things can feed into that. So like the rational factors that people need to make the decision, and the emotional, and how you kind of weave that together. So I think that's what, that's kind of a good way of thinking about it. It's like, how can we make sure we're giving a prospective student everything they need in terms of specific questions that I would sort of have in my mind from a student's perspective, because as a copywriter, it's my job to step into the reader's shoes, right? So I'd be thinking, is this a good and interesting thing to study? Is this a good place to study it? Those are the two main questions. Like, should I study this? And should I study this here? And just like really simplifying it down to those two things, because a lot of program pages don't answer those two questions.
Interesting.
And they overcomplicate it, so it's really helpful, I think, to bring yourself back to the simplest questions that you need to answer, which is, should I study this, and should I study this here?
Should I study this is an interesting one, because I would think that it was like really just, they already know that they want to study that, and so it's like, let me try to convince you to study it here. But that's really interesting that I now that you say that, I bet there are a lot of people who are just casually browsing different areas of study. And, thinking back to when I was going into college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So, there is such an opportunity to sell the actual field of study as well as doing it at your school.
Exactly. And I think it's worth us, remembering that people are going to be at this different place in their journey with this stuff. Some people might be like, yes, I definitely want to study. I was looking at an example we're going to come on to later, but about like a bachelor of psychology, because that is a subject that I wish that I had studied. Like, now that I have been a copywriter for 20 years and I understand how important psychology is to being a good communicator. I wish that I'd done that, but I can't go back in time. I did like French too. Um, I I think you might know that you want to study psychology. You know, that might be something that you've always wanted to study, or you're very clear on what it involves. But equally, like having just a really clear description of what it is, like what does that actually mean? What does that involve? That might be needed as well. People might be weighing up different subjects.
Yeah. And like maybe even like who are some of the heroes of psychology, and what are some of the major advancements in thought that they brought into place that people might not even have realized came from a psychologist?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, what is psychology all about? What things has it contributed? How have things moved forward thanks to psychology? But going back to your question about what questions to answer, I mean, those are the two top level ones. But I think underneath that, if you think about the rational and the emotional side of things, I mean, from a rational perspective, you want to know things like, you know, what's in it for me? What am I going to get on this program? What do I need to do next? So really it's a transactional page in a way. It's partly a transactional page. You want to know, this is a big time investment and a big money investment for people. Like, what am I going to actually be getting? So very clear information on what I'm going to be getting. And then the emotional side of things, I think people might be asking questions like, you know, am I going to belong here? Am I going to fit in here? What's your student experience like? You know, what's the support side of things like? What kind, you know, it's also, for some people, it's a really big thing they might be leaving home for the first time. They might be going to a completely new city, a new place. So I think, it's really, really helpful to think about it with those questions in mind, because by doing that, then it forces you to be thinking about it from the reader's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some areas, so like thinking about the emotional and the logical and all those things, what are some patterns that that you see a lot of schools engaging in that are ineffective? Like where are areas where they waste words on things that are just distractions?
I think that there are common sort of patterns and things that I see cropping up all the time on these pages, of things that are not working as well as they could do. And I mean, the first one is that there's often too much navel-gazing, like I call it. You know, there's too much talking about the university or the school and what we can do, and we're really good at this, and we do this, and we. It's too much about them. So that goes on a lot.
Navel gazing. I've never heard that.
Navel
but I like
gazing.
it.
You're looking inward, and you need to be
Okay.
looking outward.
All right, I'm going to use that from now on. Stop navel gazing at the dinner table.
Stop looking at your navel.
I'm going to use that on my kids. I'm going to find some way to use that on my kids today. All right. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. The second thing is that they're too generic often. They're too general and generic and not tangible. And for me, that often feels like it's a bit like the language of the politician. You know, it's like when a politician speaks and you're like, there's part of you that's going, just tell me what you mean. What are you actually saying?
Right.
And I get that feeling a lot when I'm reading program pages. I'm like, but I don't actually understand what you mean. Like they'll say something like, you'll be learning how to solve current business issues, something like that, something really vague. And you're like,
right.
What do you mean? Like, what business issues? That might be really interesting. Actually, there might be some really interesting business issues that we could put in there to bring it to life, but we don't know what they are. So I have to then dig that out when I talk to the academics. So it's too generic. Then you've got also the too much academic language, which I've already mentioned. Often they're left in the hands of sometimes they're left in the hands of the program leads to write. And so it's not their fault. They're not communications experts. They are experts at teaching their subject. And so they don't write in the language of the reader.
Yeah.
And the result of all that, if you put all that together, is they're too boring. They're too boring. They're not interesting enough. I'll just cut to the chase here. And but they're not doing justice to the program. So I
Hmm.
speak to the academics. I do lots of interviews with academics, and almost every call that I have, I come away really excited about the program. I'm like, wow, I want to do that program. I want to do that program. Like almost every week, I want to do a different program because of these. They
Yeah.
sound brilliant,
Yep.
but then you look at the program page and it's just not doing it. It's
Right.
flat. It's not doing what it needs to do, and that's what we try and turn around for people.
Yeah, the getting specific is one of the things that I think is so underutilized in storytelling, in copywriting, content creation, whatever. Because you're right. Like when people, uh, organizations, leaders use these vague sort of platitudes, it just goes right over people's head. It doesn't do anything. Like solving business problems. Yeah, what does that mean? I mean, anything could be a business problem. But if you were to say like, um, I don't know, we'll we'll teach you how to research your target market and craft a
Yep.
message specifically for them. Now you've got me, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm bad at that. Like I don't know where to
Exactly.
start with market research. What, I send out a survey? Do I go door to door interviewing people? Like I want to know how to do market research. But if you had just said solving business problems, I don't know what that means. And I'm just
Yeah,
kind of like,
that's
next.
right. Yeah, yeah, totally. I think it's just worth thinking that good copy needs to paint a picture in people's minds. You want to paint a picture, you want people to be able to imagine and visualize what you're talking about. And the problem with generic language is it doesn't do that. It just kind of washes over you. Like, well, I don't actually understand what that means. And so
Mhm.
it doesn't resonate. But a specific detail, and there are lots of interesting details that you can pull out. That's a lot of what we do in program pages, is adding in that specific detail to make it more interesting.
And there's a lot of crossover between copywriting and storytelling too, because when I'm interviewing a student or alumni for a success story or something, that's really on my mind, is like, I need to get this person to be specific, because what they're, naturally going to do is fly really high over their experience and just, it was great. Here's the professors I liked. Here's the classes I liked. It was generally great, and now everything's great. Or
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like you need that too, but it really, I find like the emotion comes in the specifics. So like for me, a question that I often ask is like, tell me about like a specific moment that was a turning point for you in
Yeah.
your academic experience. And it kind of gets them to think like, yeah, was there a spot where I wasn't sure before, but then I kind of became confident? Or I was going this direction, then I started pivoting to go that direction, because I think that like pivot point is really interesting, and that's such a good opportunity for specifics. But if you just say, like, there are platitudes that people just expect you to say, like,
Yeah.
and so if you meet those expectations, you just blend in. If you meet the expectations of small class sizes, great professors, blah blah blah, then you're just another drop of water under the bridge, or I don't know, some analogy like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's a big challenge, isn't it? In higher ed, is that schools and universities can just blend into this sea of sameness, and that's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're trying to help them with. Is how do you find a way to be distinctive? How do you find a way to stick in people's minds? And one of the ways that, as you say, is to tell good specific stories that are emotive. And I love that, though, that turning point. I've just scribbled that down. I'm going to add that to my questions. But I was just thinking about, it's like moments of connection as well. How can you capture these moments, of like, I saw a university recently, can't remember which one, someone in the UK, but they'd got people they'd recorded students talking about the professor that had the most impact on them. And they got them to tell a really specific story about what that impact was. And then they showed that story to the professor, and they filmed the professor's reaction to it, and then you got these professors who were just like deeply moved by the impact that they'd had on their students. And it was such a brilliant thing because it was like emotive, it was specific, it was like human, and it just made me think, God, that's so much better than just saying we've got a really great student experience, or you'll have a quality learning experience or whatever. You showing me what it's like. It was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of my most impactful college, I feel like what I got most out of college was my experience with my professors and the relationships that I got from them. And I've told this story before on the podcast, but I had one professor in art school. Her name was Gilda, who just had a profound impact on me and my career. And she just supported me so much. And there were so many times where I would just go sit in her office and just talk to her about something that was frustrating me, or ask her a question about how to price a painting or something like that. And I just have so many rich memories with Gilda. She passed away a number of years ago, but that legacy, I think, for me, just those emotions that when I think about my college experience, I think about Gilda, and you can't just you would not get that by just saying, close student professor relationships,
Yeah.
Okay, so then what do program pages need more of? I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but if there's anything we haven't touched on, let's go there.
Yeah, I think, we've talked about some of it, emotion and creating connection and those kind of things. I mean, clarity, that is like the starting point for good copy, right? We need to, before we think about doing anything else, it's got to be clear. So make that your starting point. Clarity, particularly thinking about students having to navigate lots of different schools and universities, like how can you make it easy for them to get the information they need? And there are a couple of other things I thought of around this. Do more showing and less telling. I see a lot of schools and universities saying, again, this goes back to the talking about yourself thing as well, but it's like, we're world leading in whatever it is, in particular type of cancer research, for example. But you could show me that instead by inviting me to listen to a podcast with one of your professors talking about the latest developments in that field. So show me rather than tell me. I think it's so much more. It's like allowing people to come to their own conclusion as well. You're not saying we're brilliant. You're allowing people to go, I'm going to discover that for myself. Oh, you are brilliant because you're really interesting. You're doing this really exciting stuff. So I think that I don't see universities doing that enough, showing people how good they are. And also invite people in. See if you can lift the lid a little bit and invite people in. So again, I don't see many program pages where you are giving, where there's the chance to do like a taster session, like a try before you buy even, almost, So it might be a free workshop. It could be like a low cost workshop, but you're asking people to invest a huge amount of money. So why not have more of these kind of taster sort of sessions and ways for people to try out what you're offering before they actually go into the full program.
Yeah, there's a school. I've for longtime listeners of the podcast, you've heard me talk about this one before. It's just one of my favorite ones. But Hillsdale College is a faith-based school here in Michigan, and they do these amazing free courses, and they're like masterclass level, like those masterclass trailers where it's like, these Hollywood directors that are teaching you things. But super well filmed, high production value, really interesting, kind of philosophical discussion about things in the Bible. And the interesting thing was I started seeing a physical therapist just the other day. And as I was waiting in the waiting room, I hear one of the patients that's working with the physical therapist talking about Hillsdale College and these free courses that they have. And he's just some random, like, older gentleman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that's getting around. That's like, I loved it. I loved that I knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, no, it's an effective strategy though, right? Because like I guess you see it all the time on LinkedIn, for example. People offer something for free or like a small ask before you go for the bigger ask. And I think that schools and education institutions could be doing more of that. Being a bit more savvy about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming up against time here, so I want to jump forward a little bit to talk about
Yeah,
these
yeah.
couple of examples that you gave us.
Oh yeah. Okay.
All right, so you sent me some examples. One was from University of Sydney. The other one was from University of Bath School of
Yeah.
Management. So I want to talk about walk us through like what's working about these. What's successful about these pages?
Yeah, so I picked a couple of examples. I mean, the first thing I just wanted to say is there's lots of different ways to approach a program page. We don't want to encourage schools and universities to, all have the same kind of program page, because then we fall into that sea of sameness thing again. But I think it's really good to look at what other people are doing and like pick ideas that you like and, model things and, make it work for your institution. So I'm always on the lookout for good examples. And I've found, a couple of what I think are good examples. The University of Bath. So that's just down the road from me. I'm in Bristol, in the southwest of England, and Bath is like about a 15-minute drive away. Their university, we've worked with them actually. We didn't write this particular page, but I really like their MBA page. They've got various MBAs. This is the full-time MBA page. The first thing I like about it is the first screen immediately hits you with the key message for the program. Like, it's an MBA program, so it's going to be high profile. It's probably generating a lot of revenue for the institution. So they've invested in proper branding. It's got its key message, which is just going to wait for it to come around again because it's a rolling. Ambition changes everything. And then a subline, give your career the boost it deserves with the Bath MBA. So immediately you are hit kind of between the eyes with the key message, the proposition for this program. And then all you've got apart from that on that first screen is the call to action, which is apply now. And that is incredibly powerful compared to a lot of other pages where, that first page is like, that is key space to be using. And so you need to be using it well. So I really like that about how they've started there. And then actually it's quite funny because we were just talking about this try before you buy thing. They've now straight underneath that, they've got, you can register for a masterclass.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So they are using that idea that we just said. You can register for an MBA masterclass and, test out what the MBA is all about before you go in and sign up or register your interest. The rest of the page, I mean, it's really clean. It's very clean. So obviously copy and design need to work hand in hand, right? So I really like the way that it just guides you through. It's got a very short intro next where it explains what the program's about. We're talking a couple of paragraphs. So again, you've got another little bit of information to add on, but you're not overfaced with too much information at that point. And then the rest of the page is, it's divided up in lots of really nice sections. It's got a fast facts section where you've got key entry requirements and the fees and the course start date and things like that.
The
And
fast facts I think is great because it's I think we underestimate how much it's helpful just to have, just give me the quick hit, like high level stuff in a
Yeah.
bullet point. Like whenever I see like a bullet point list, I'm like, my brain just breathes a sigh of relief, because I'm like,
Yeah,
this is going to be
exactly.
structured in a way that's easy for me to grasp. Anyway,
Yeah,
continue.
and exactly. And I think that's really important to remember, especially the way we read online. There's been a lot of research, hasn't there, around how people read, and we don't read. It's not like we're reading a book. We are scanning for the key bits of information. So anything that you can do on the page to make it easy for people to take in information quickly without overfacing them.
Yep.
And then we get into a video, which you're going to like. There's a video next with a student, with a current student talking about the program. So, that's obviously great because it's another layer of storytelling, and we're getting that social proof, the student talking about the course rather
Mm-hmm.
than the university talking about the course.
Right.
Then we've got another key features and benefits section. So again, it's like bish, 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 really easy to absorb information with the key benefits.
Yep.
And the whole page is broken up like that. So it's very, very easy to read. And it just kind of guides you through. It takes you sort of on a journey. I don't know if you know, there's a copywriter that I really admire on LinkedIn called Eddie Schlainer. He's from Chicago. And he talks about, I was reading something recently about him talking about the slippery slide, the slippery slope or the slippery slide, and this idea that you want to like people to slide down your page. So and this page
Yeah.
is a really great example of that. You want to keep reading on because nothing's overfacing. They've used a mix of formats. They've got 3 videos on there. One is from a current student, one's about an internship student, and then the last one is an alumnus student talking about where the course has taken them, where the program has taken them in their career. So I think it's a really great example.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was you that I found that guy about the slippery slope, because I earmarked that to, like, I think it was maybe a podcast episode that he posted, but I was like,
Yeah.
I need to learn more about that. Like, really creating a rabbit hole for people to go down, because once they're interested, and you can just keep layering on more and more and more in bite-sized little breadcrumbs. It's not like hitting them over the head, trying to tell them everything in one single video. It's just, but creating a whole journey for them to slide down.
Exactly. And just like not overfacing people. Like we can't take in too much information at once. Drip feeding a little bit and then a little bit more and then a little bit more. And if you want to go deeper, you can, so this page, that's the landing page, but then they've got sub pages. So that's another, good device to think about for these pages. You don't have to include it all on one page. You could have your main page, and then they've got a key features and benefits page. They've got sections on funding and scholarships, how to apply, the city of Bath. So it's almost like that. I mean, that is one of their bigger programs, but it's like a mini website almost in itself.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at University of Sydney.
Okay. So I thought I'd go right to the other side of the world for the other one.
Yep.
And this is really different from the Bath page. But what I really like about this one is, again, they do a really great job of that first screen. Is it called above the fold? I don't know what the terminology is
Above
for
the
these
fold.
things.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So that first screen, when you get to the page, all you've got underneath the title, this is the Bachelor of Psychology. You've got the ranking. So very simply, it says 3rd in Australia for psychology. And then you've got a paragraph that describes why study psychology. So this is what I was explaining earlier that I think can be helpful. And it says, explore the science of human behavior. In this course, you'll build your specialization in psychology to help you understand mental processes and allow you to better understand how we think, act, and feel. So it's like a really succinct description of what psychology is, which I thought, I like that. It's simple and it's clear. And then they've got another section just underneath that, Who is it for? This is ideal for the student who's considering a career in psychology industry, but also wants to keep their options open. So you immediately know that it's talking to you, if that is you. It sort of allows you to self-select. And then again, they've got a video on that above the fold screen. And this time it's a brand video. So it's like a 30-second video, but really kind of quite a powerful video where they've got all the key benefits, the key facts about why study psychology at Sydney, which I really like. And this page is actually a lot shorter than the Bath one. Again, they've got quite a prominent section on careers, like where the program can take you, what kind of jobs you could go on to do. You could be a neuroscientist, you could be a psychologist, all the different careers. Obviously, there are lots of benefits of studying at this level, but one of the main ones is working out what job you're going to do at the end of it. So I think sometimes this careers information can be hidden quite far down in a page, and they've pulled it quite near the front. It's quite near the top end. And again, they've used sub-pages. So the first page that you come to doesn't overface you. It's just quite simple. And again, the design is just really simple and clean.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Simple and clean is very effective.
Yeah. I think there's that thing about confused brains don't make decisions. That's not the actual quote, but it's kind of, people are potentially going to be overfaced with so much information. So if they can, at this point in the decision-making process, if schools can make it easy and kind of calm down that anxious mind, I think that can be really helpful too.
I like about what's University of Sydney at the top. There's a apply now button, and then right next to that there's a ask a question button.
Oh yeah.
Which I find as a consumer, if you can make it easy for me to ask a question about your product or solve a technical issue, like if I've already bought it and I'm having an issue, like having a chat bot or something on the page, I'm much more likely to not like bounce from from you, because if I have to go through like a bunch of hoops to like what I hate is being is going to like the contact page, and then they try to go get you to read all the forums and search all the previously asked questions about did that answer your question, and then and then you have to like dig and dig and dig for like a contact button. It's like they really don't want you to call them.
Please don't contact us. And just on that note, actually, I think another thing that can work really well on program pages is if you can have that direct, like talking to a student option. Like I know I've been working with the university recently, and you can have a chat with them, a student ambassador. And so you get to talk to a current student who's doing the course. And I like that idea too. It's that peer-to-peer, kind of support, and maybe even like a community kind of, if you could chat with people before you go, it might, help with the idea. It might not seem so scary, actually, the idea of going.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, cool. These are great examples. Thanks for pulling those up for us.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, this has been a great conversation. Where can people connect with you at if they want to work with you or follow you or anything like that?
Well, LinkedIn is kind of the only platform I'm on, really, but I love LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, so I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. And our website is allthingswords.co.uk. So you can find out more about us on there. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place to connect.
Cool. I will give a personal review here for following Jo on LinkedIn. I follow her. I very much enjoy it. I discovered Jo through Kyle Campbell, who if you are on LinkedIn much at all, you will probably see him come into your feed if you're in the you're in the higher ed. I like Kyle. I feel like I know him already, and the funny thing is like we got on a virtual call a couple weeks ago for the first time, and we were both surprised we hadn't actually met each other. We were like, realizing on the call we had never actually directly connected.
Funny, yeah, it's funny that though, isn't it? Because you kind of feel like you know people from LinkedIn, which is, I guess, the power of good content as well. When you get on a call with someone, you feel like you know them, then it shows that their content's working.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yes. And so for people listening, hire a professional for your program pages, because having the program director or something like write the copy is a good start, but there is a design to moving people through to making a decision, moving people down that funnel. It's very important. It is a skill that takes a very specific type of person that knows how, kind of the brain works, how brains, move through the page, skim through the page, what words they need to hear, where they need to hear them. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for working with professional copywriters like Joe, who will really give you a big return on investment. Just picking different words, telling better stories, and better page design is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah.
So Joe, thank you so much for being here. This is great to chat with you.
Really great to chat with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening. 3 things I want to give you before you go. Number 1, reminder to sign up for my free weekly newsletter, all about creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience. And you can do that at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Unveiled is spelled UNVEILD. Number 2, if you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Share it with your team, your boss, your dog, whatever. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to do that. Number 3, reach out to me. If you have comments, questions, you want to talk about a video project, whatever, my email is john@unveiled.tv. John is spelled JOHN, or follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my last name is spelled AZONI. That's all for today, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. Thanks.